Welcome along to another BMW E39 M5 DIY how-to guide, and today we're going to be looking at our clutch hose. The standard system on all E39s is hydraulic for the clutch release system. So you've got a master cylinder under the pedals and then a slave cylinder attached to the gearbox. In between there you've got a hydraulic line which transmits the fluid from the master cylinder to the slave cylinder, so when you put your foot on the pedal it releases the clutch and allows you to change gear or set off from a standard start. Pretty basic stuff. The standard hydraulic line that comes with a car is pretty much solid most of the way until it drops down somewhere down there, or if you're in America, somewhere down there, where it turns into a rubber piece, then has a bit of what looks like a wire basket for the hydraulic line, which circles around 2 or 3 times before going into the slave cylinder. So we're going to get rid of all that. A, because on this car it's nearly 20 years old. B, we're going to use a braided stainless steel hose which has been made specially for the job, which is what we have here. So on the master cylinder side it is a push fitting, and also on the slave cylinder side, if you were to keep some of the standard hose where the wire basket effect piece of hydraulic line circles next to the gearbox, then it's a push fitting there as well. But we're going to be doing away with that and plumbing direct into the slave cylinder using an M10x1 hydraulic union, which will plumb straight into the back of the slave cylinder, remove all the 20-year-old fixtures and hydraulic fittings, and we should have a nice crisp feel for the pedal. Probably wondering why we're doing this. Well, it's not been changed in its lifetime. Clutch system generally only ever gets thought about whenever you're actually changing the clutch or you have a problem with it. Everything in between your pedal and the clutch itself is generally forgotten about and nobody bothers with. So we'll change it out, bleed it up, then we'll go through the process of doing it all as well with you today. First thing we're going to have to do so we can get access to parts from the top is remove the pollen filters and the air intake trumpets. I'm not even going to teach you how to suck eggs for removing these because you'll have all removed them before, very easy. The only thing I will suggest is being careful removing these from the bulkhead, as the plastic lugs go very brittle over time and liable to snap off, and you won't get a nice seal on the bulkhead when you refit it. And if that happens, then you'll be drawing air into the cabin from the engine bay, and if you've got an exhaust leak or anything like that, then you know you're going to end up drawing exhaust fumes into the cabin and potentially causing yourself some injury. Once you've got the pollen filters and air intake trumpets off, you can then see down the back of the engine the larger 1/4 inch pipe, which is just down there, which runs over the top of the gearbox. That's your clutch hose for the metal part of the hydraulic system, and it goes into the car through the bulkhead and then clips into the master cylinder. But before we need to do anything else up here, we need to go underneath the car and remove the under tray and the hose assembly from the slave cylinder and drain off the clutch fluid. The brake reservoir also shares the clutch fluid as well, but there are 2 separate chambers inside, so draining off the clutch fluid is not going to cause you any issues at all with your brakes, as the chambers are separate at the back. So if your clutch system were to fail on the hydraulic side, you would still have enough fluid in there for your brakes to operate, and vice versa. Once underneath the car, we need to remove the under tray. We'll do that, then that will give us access to the clutch slave cylinder on the near side of the car, and then we can start removing the pipework. The under trays are easy, we've covered these in many videos before. Simple 1/4 twist screws and it will start to pop down. Now we've got the under tray off, we can see where the slave cylinder assembly is. You can see the standard rubber line right at the top, coming into the push fitting, then down to the basket type arrangement for the metal line where it goes into the slave cylinder. So we're going to be removing all of this. We're going to keep the metal bracket as a holder for our brand new pipe, but first we need to start by removing the bleed nipple and draining off a clutch system. You can do that in one of two ways. You can let gravity do its work, take about 10 minutes. You can pump the master cylinder by using the clutch pedal to blow the fluid out, or you can use a syringe and use a piece of silicone hose or something onto the nipple and suck out the clutch fluid that's in there. So that's the option I'm going to use, as that's what I've got to hand. So once the syringe has been attached, you can then start to draw off the old fluid. As you can see, it's coming out nicely. Will look like there's quite a lot of air in there, as the bore of the syringe is quite large. But it's drawing that down from the master cylinder. Do that a few times to ensure that you've got all the fluid out, otherwise it'll be leaking all over your floor when you start to remove the hydraulic lines. Once we've drained off the clutch fluid, we can then use an 11mm crowfoot spanner to crack off the union. Then this will allow us to remove the hydraulic line from the slave cylinder. Once the hydraulic line's off the slave cylinder, allow gravity to finish draining off any remnants of fluid from the system. Do not use the clutch pedal to pump out any remaining fluid, as this will just spray it all over your gearbox and underneath your car, cause a bit of a mess, get all over your exhaust, fire risk, yada yada yada. You get the idea. So once that's drained off, we'll then detach the push fitting from the rubber hose and remove the metalwork completely from under here. Then we'll go into the car and start removing the hose from the master cylinder. To remove the push fit hose from the metal part of the system, you're going to need a long screwdriver and remove this little clip up here. So insert your screwdriver into the clip and lever it out, and then that will allow you to twist and remove the hose assembly once you've broken free any corrosion which has formed over the years. Once we've finished outside the car and underneath, we can move inside, and you'll need to remove the pedal kick plate, and then you'll be able to see the master cylinder, the push fit union and the hydraulic hose. To get to the hydraulic hose where it goes through the bulkhead, you've got two options. You can either remove the carpet in its entirety from the front and the pipe drops down about here, or you can get a Stanley blade and cut yourself a little section which allows you to pull the carpet back for easier access. It's entirely up to you which way you go. I'm going to be going for a Stanley blade option, as this is a track car, it's not a concourse machine anymore. So I'm not too fussed for a little bit of damage to the carpet. But if your car is, you know, pristine example, then you might want to go for the option of taking the carpets out. That's a massive job, but it's your car at the end of the day, so it's your choice. Once you're happy with either carpet removal or making an access point, then we can remove the clip from the master cylinder. Carefully you don't lose this, as it's going to be reused. Then we can pull the hydraulic hose off the bottom of the master cylinder to remove it, and then we can push it through the bulkhead. Be careful not to damage the master cylinder, as it's made of plastic and it can be quite brittle, and we need to reuse all the parts on it for when we reassemble. We can see where the hydraulic line comes through the bulkhead just above the #1 bank exhaust. There's a aluminium heat shield in the way. You've got two options again with this one. You can either bend it to remove it, or you can take the entire thing off completely, but taking it off would involve dropping the exhaust on the #1 side of the engine. So we're going to go for the option of bending the aluminium heat shield out of the way so we can pull the hydraulic line through the bulkhead and then remove it from the car completely. Once you've removed the hardline hydraulic hose from the vehicle, remove the rubber grommet from it and we can put that onto the brand new braided hose. We can then refit this to the vehicle. So push this end through the bulkhead into the footwell, allowing the two-pronged toggles on the rubber grommet to go through the bulkhead as well, so you can pull it in flush. This will then prevent any moisture coming into the footwell. We can then route the rest of the hose over the top of the gearbox and connect it into the slave cylinder using the hardline fitting. Once you've tightened it up in the slave cylinder and you're happy with its routing, we can then clip the hose back into the original points which we used in the engine bay on the bulkhead. The hose will then naturally settle as it has a tendency to spin slightly. Once it's done that, we can then push this end into the quick release fitting on the mast cylinder, and then we're ready to start bleeding up the clutch system. Now we've got the new hose on the slave cylinder, we can see it's passed through the brackets. Ensure the rubber grommet is still in place, otherwise there's a risk of vibration and metal on metal causing an issue. You can see a little bit further up into the transmission tunnel where the new hose is clipped into the original bulkhead fixture, and this will be mirrored on the other side. The hose is ready to be pushed through the bulkhead into its final position as well, and then pulled through, fitted to the mast cylinder, and then any excess hose can be routed correctly up over the transmission tunnel in the engine bay against the bulkhead. Now the hose is pulled through, we can fit it to the mast cylinder. Just simply pushing it into place. Then fitting the locking clip then that's that in position and done. Then we can route it underneath the carpet correctly to prevent any interference between the clutch pedal and the hose itself. Once you've fitted the clip and ensured the hose is secure, we can then put the carpet back after pulling the rubber grommet through the bulkhead down here. Don't put the trim piece back just yet, as we're going to check for leaks once we've bled up the clutch. And to bleed up the clutch, we've done that in a previous video, but we'll go through it again for you. It's very simple. Ensure the mast cylinder is fully pressed to the floor. It'll hold itself there, so there's no need to keep something against it. Up into the engine bay to the brake fluid reservoir. Fill up with brake fluid reservoir, then we can start drawing through the fluid from the slave cylinder. Start bleeding up the clutch, remove the reservoir cap from the mast cylinder, and at the rear part, not sure if the camera will pick it up, but you can see where the clutch side of the system is, as it is empty. Slightly lighter in shading because there's no fluid in there, and you can see the brake side of it still at maximum. So we'll top that off to fill up the clutch side of it, keep it filled up to the maximum level, and then we'll go underneath the vehicle and start drawing through some fresh fluid from the slave cylinder. For the first part of the bleeding, we can use the syringe again to draw through air from the system until fluid starts coming through. You'll have to periodically check the master cylinder to make sure that it's full, as you don't want to be drawing air through from the master cylinder reservoir tank. In between each time you've done that, close the bleed nipple, then that'll stop air going back into the system. Once you start getting fluid drawn through, we can then revert to using the air bleeding kit. We're not going to connect it to an airline, as it'll just draw too much fluid through straight away and suck air back into the system. But inside here there's a pipe which runs all the way to the bottom, and in there's some used brake fluid. So once we start using the clutch pedal to pump through fresh fluid, it'll go through into the bottom. This pipe will then be full of fluid, so when we release the mast cylinder, or by pulling the clutch pedal back up, it'll allow fresh fluid to circulate only in there instead of drawing air back into the system. Once again, keep the mast cylinder reservoir topped up, as if you start drawing air into the system it'll become very difficult to bleed doing this method. Once you've finished bleeding up the clutch system, when you return the clutch pedal from the floor back up to its normal resting position, it should be instantly firm. Once it goes to that point, then it's done and dusted. All air has been exhausted from the system. Check it for leaks, make sure that the push fitting is not leaking and the connection to the slave cylinder is not leaking as well. And if all is good, then you're ready to take your car out for a test drive once putting it back together. Unfortunately, we're all in lockdown, cracking on into the 4th week of COVID-19 lockdown in the UK. So we can't take the car out for a test drive, which is a shame. But you know what, it's something to look forward to once all this has calmed itself down and restrictions are lifted. So thank you for watching, stay safe out there. Try and keep your social distance, because we don't want this COVID-19 shit spreading any further than it already is. We all know people who've suffered, we've lost loved ones, work colleagues and friends, and we don't want to lose anybody else. So keep yourselves distanced, stay home, stay safe. Cheers for watching, and we'll be back soon with more videos and how to do things, and yes, the ever long promised track car build. So we'll see you again soon.